up quick at about noon.
And welcome into the Friday edition of the podcast with Damien Barling, presented as always by Vibe Health Bar, home of the best tasting organic cold pressed juices in the city. Their superfood loaded acai bowls. You can check them out in Folsom, Oak Park, and East Sac. Appreciate you as always for being here with me. Appreciate you for trying out the YouTube stream. For those of you that have Still learning it. Still, we'll be making some corrections as the weeks and days go along. But appreciate everybody who has checked out our first week here over there on YouTube. And as always, appreciate everybody who's checked us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, radio.com, all of the different podcast platforms. And I realize many of you are off your normal routines as, well, the world is kind of off of their normal routines. And we're entering we're kind of entering what's going to be a new normal for a little while. Things are just going to be different. I made the kind of the comparison for those of us who are old enough to remember September 11th. And if you recall the days, really even the weeks following 9/11, it was kind of like everything was just kind of in a haze. Like you didn't really know what to do. Like do I watch movies? Do I watch TV shows? Like there was just kind of this, like, I don't really know what to do. Sports were suspended. And, obviously that's the case. And that's the main story here, at least for us in the sports world today. There are none. The NCAA tournament has been canceled. All winter and spring sports have been canceled. Pretty much all conference tournaments, ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, Pac-12, SEC, they were all suspended yesterday. Major League Baseball's delayed its opening day by at the very least 2 weeks. We talked about we were waiting on what the NHL was going to decide to do. The NHL has suspended their season. We got an alert this morning that the Masters in April has been postponed. So our next 4 to 6 weeks, we're going to be living in this alternate reality. And not because there aren't any sports. I mean, no disrespect to Major League Baseball, but June, July rolls around, man. It's pretty boring in the sports landscape. But I think things overall are going to be different. Like we're going to be experiencing things that we've never experienced before. As far as what we do here on the podcast, what you hear on Sports Talk Radio, what you see on NFL free agency still starts next week. Like the CBA, it's got to be passed by Sunday. None of that's changed. There's still going to be plenty to talk about. There's still going to be plenty of ways to, I kind of hate this term, but there are going to be ways to like escape reality, so to speak, but not really. You know what I mean? Like there are going to be ways to, at some point, the main topic of conversation today is still the coronavirus. Come Monday, we're probably going to have to, okay, we've been 4, 5, 6 days without sports. Okay, now what? Now what are we going to talk about? We're always going to have things to talk about. There's always going to be things to talk about in the world of sports. And we'll talk about all those. It felt like there was a dramatic shift in how this virus was being perceived a couple of nights ago. When the NBA so quickly, after what went on in Oklahoma City, when the NBA canceled their season with that quickness, it was, I feel like at least in the United States, the tone of the conversation shifted a lot. I think there were a lot of people thinking, we're overreacting. It's just the flu. Oh, let's everybody just chill. And then all of a sudden it was like, the entire NBA shut down because one player tested positive. And then all of a sudden, NHL followed suit. NCAA followed. And then it was just this domino effect of the sports world shutting down. And another thing I was thinking about the NBA. By the way, the NBA, it was reported yesterday that the belief is the NBA is going to shut down for at minimum 30 days. It's going to be that, you hear this a lot with injuries. The situation is going to be reevaluated in 30 days. It's like, okay, makes complete sense. And here's my feeling on the NBA. I think the regular season is and should be over. I don't think there's any reason to try to salvage regular season games. And I know that's frustrating for Kings fans because the Kings are relatively close to that 8 spot. There's 3.5 games. They're 3.5 games away. They had games against New Orleans. There's no way the final, 18 games or whatever it is can be played. There's just no way at all. So the way it needs to be determined, really, with the exception of that 8 spot in the Western Conference, and I mean, technically, the 8 spot in the Eastern Conference isn't locked up either. But most of the we're talking, there's 16 playoff teams. 14 of the teams are really, really nailed in there. Again, I understand it stinks for Kings fans, but if the NBA, and this is a major, major if they're able to continue the season in 30 days, even if it's, because think about it, 30 days from now is basically the end of the regular season. If you just chop off the final month of the regular season and say, okay, this is what's best for our league, this is what's best for our fans, this is what's best for our television partners, here's what we're going to do. When we resume, the regular season is over, and we're going to be able to start the playoffs without missing a beat. Of course, there could also be a possibility where you do have the NBA playoffs and you do have the NBA finals, you just don't have them in front of fans. So there's that. And I think that I don't think that that's a real possibility. I actually think the NBA season is over. I think it's completely over. Because how much is going to change in the next 30 days? And maybe a better way of asking is how much is going to change for the better in the next 30 days? Because I still wonder if we're not, are we still a couple of weeks away from really hitting the peak of this? Are we living the peak right now? Is this the, the big eye-opening moment where it's oh man, we've really got something on our hands. We're living, this is a moment in time that's going to be written about in history books. Or have we hit that moment yet? And I wonder, I kind of feel okay, Thursday night, or what's today, Friday? So it was Wednesday night was the moment where, people, I think, really kind of sat up and thought, oh man, maybe this is a little bit bigger deal than I originally thought that it was. And, with that, I think, okay, well, what if there's another moment like that? And, you hear about, all of these self-quarantines going on and, people who don't feel well are being sent home. I wonder if there's any point over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks where there is a mandatory self-quarantine where it's okay, listen, everybody, we need you to stay home for the next 4 days. Or we need you to, I know there are already companies doing that. There are already companies operating without, they're operating with the terms essential personnel only. There are companies that are operating with teams where, okay, these people go in this week and then these people are going to go in next week. That's happening a lot in Sacramento. And I think it might happen a lot more. And not everybody's job allows them to work from home. There are a lot of jobs that allow that, but I mean, I think you probably even stretch it and say most don't. But I wonder if we're just kind of at that peak yet. Are we at the apex of where this moment is talked about forever? Was it that moment Wednesday night in the NBA where the domino effect of shutting down sports in this country happened? I mean, sports are shut down, across the world. But we're talking about every major sports league in this country has shut down in one way or another. The NFL can conduct free agency. There's a lot has changed with the NFL over the course of the last couple of years. They're not moving the start of the league year, and I don't see any reason that they need to. They haven't made any rulings on the NFL draft, which is in late April. I guess you can buy yourself a couple of more weeks. If Vince McMahon doesn't have to make a decision on WrestleMania, which is 3 weeks away, and by the way, there is no, to steal a Vince McMahon line, there is no chance in hell that WrestleMania is happening. Absolutely none. If you've never been a part of WrestleMania, and I realize some of you may not care about professional wrestling, they always say, well, WrestleMania is it's the Super Bowl of professional wrestling. It's not. it's significantly bigger. WrestleMania is a week-long event now. It's morphed into this week-long event that not only involves the WWE who put on WrestleMania, it involves dozens and dozens of other wrestling companies that converge on the state and general area in which WrestleMania is, and they host their own events. You know, starting Wednesday, the Sunday before WrestleMania, it runs all the way until the following. It used to run until the following Tuesday. I assume now it just runs till from Tuesday until Monday, where you just have event after event after event. WWE is hosting All Access, and people fly in from all over the world. I've been to multiple WrestleManias. I've been to 3 WrestleManias. They've all been here in California. The Santa Clara one, there's 2 different versions of WrestleMania. There's like the modern stadium WrestleMania, and then there are the ones before. Like I went to WrestleMania 16, which was dubbed WrestleMania 2000, and it was trash at the Arrowhead Pond. I went to WrestleMania, I think it was 21 at the Staples Center, which was okay. And then WrestleMania, I think it was 31 at Levi Stadium. So the one at Levi Stadium is the closest to, you know, that modern version of WrestleMania that lasts a week long. You know, there was stuff going on in San Jose. There was stuff going on in San Francisco. There was stuff going on in Redwood City. There was stuff going on all over the Bay Area. And again, you know, thousands of wrestling fans from all over the world come in to be a part of these events. WrestleMania is like at the beginning of April in Tampa. And I understand that they're trying to come up with contingency plans. This is the first time that I've been excited for a WWE event, the one tonight. I'm very, very curious to see how they pull off Smackdown. Because Vince he does not cancel shows. He absolutely, I mean, the only show I can think of him canceling, I mean, Owen Hart died on a Sunday. They did a live show on a Monday. The only show that I can remember him canceling was the Chris Benoit one, which if he could have that one back, he'd do it in a heartbeat. But Chris Benoit, if you recall the news reports where, you know, his wife and his son had been found dead in the house, and this was on a Monday, and Vince decided to call off the live show and air like a tribute to Chris Benoit. Like basically they aired his DVD. And then it was made aware of what happened like midway through that show, and there was nothing they could do. They just kind of had to choke on it. Like they just had to, you know, deal with that. But that's the only time I can remember him suspending a show. Even they used to tape SmackDown on Tuesday. So there was a show scheduled the night of September 11th, 2001. But you know, obviously nothing happened that night, and they put it off 2 days so they could air it live. So technically, even though, you know, the taping of the show was canceled, it still aired in the time that it normally airs because they just did the show live. He didn't cancel tonight's SmackDown. They moved it to their Performance Center, which is in, I think that's in Tampa, or it's in Orlando. I think it's in Orlando. But they have a performance center that's basically set up like an old-time television studio. Like if you've ever seen like an old WCW Saturday Night, or if you've ever seen, you know, old wrestling from like the 70s, it's mostly it's not in big arenas. It's in like TV studios. That's essentially what their performance center is. It's where, you know, wrestlers go to train. It's where young wrestlers go to train, or you know, maybe established wrestlers go when they're coming back from injury or whatever. But, you know, that's their facility. It's basically set up like a television studio. And I can't wait to see what they do tonight. Like, are they just going to run a show in an empty building because they said only essential personnel will be there? Well, what is essential personnel in the WWE? I assume that means there's no audience there. So, like, who's there? What happens? I mean, obviously Vince is there and all of the producers, and you know, I get the core part of who's there, but like, who's watching, and how does this work? Like, do you like, you can't normally the ring is mic'd, so you know, big power moves have this like loud impact. You can't mic the ring in an empty arena. You'd hear everything. At least keep the illusion of what we're watching. Like there's a great professional wrestling match is usually as old school wrestlers would say, you call it in the ring, meaning the match isn't scripted until you get out there. You can't just, there are some guys who are really bad at it. It's called calling spots, right? The next sequence of moves. There are some guys who are really bad at being discreet about calling those spots, about saying, okay, throw me against the ropes, I'll fall to the floor, jump up, hip toss, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, we all know what professional wrestling is. And people say, well, it's scripted. It is, but not all matches are like scripted from beginning to end. Basically, you have a beginning and you have an end, and it's up to the wrestlers involved to get you from one point to the other. And a lot of times guys decide what they're going to do in the ring. They get a feel for the crowd. Well, there's no crowd. So maybe this is the night that, WWE is very, very scripted. Maybe this is the night where they don't call spots in the ring because you don't want to overhear it because there's no crowd to drown out any sound. There was the WWE once did an ad campaign about how the WWE universe, it fuels our product. And they shot an open where Daniel Bryan came out. And this is when the yes chant was like super, super popular. Not that it's not popular now, but it was like, it was at its apex. And he'd come out and he'd start the yes thing and he's in a big empty arena. And there's just nothing there. And he's kind of looking around like, what's going on? That's what tonight's going to be like. And I can't wait to see it. I'm just so curious because I do believe Vince McMahon is a genius when it comes to producing television. He is an innovator when it comes to producing television, particularly professional wrestling related television. So I'm excited to see this. I do feel bad that the XFL canceled its season. I mean, I feel bad in the sense I feel bad for the XFL because I thought they were doing a lot of things right. I thought they had a lot of momentum. And it's funny, the first incarnation of the XFL in 2001 technically lasted longer than the new incarnation. And the new incarnation is significantly better. It's significantly better. They had the first week buzz, not to the same level that they had back in 2001, but they had that first week, and I thought it went really well for them. And I don't think they have, they haven't horribly fallen off. They've up and down in terms of ratings and who's watching, but the product has been really good. The XFL, of course, they had originally announced they were going to play games. Particularly the Seattle team, they were going to play games in empty stadiums, but they followed suit, which is the right call by. And I really don't know who heads this league up. I know Vince McMahon owns it. I don't know how much power he's turned over to guys like Oliver Luck, who is at least the face of the league in terms of the guy who runs it publicly. But they followed suit with the NHL and the NCAA and the NBA, and that is 100% the right thing to do. But the XFL has given its players approval to sign with NFL teams anytime after they pass exit physicals, which are taking place today. And the league also announced that they will pay players their base salary and benefits for the remainder of the regular season. And, of course, season ticket holders will get refunds and credit towards future games. That was another part of the announcement for the XFL, is that they'll be around next year. I think that's a positive. I think that's a good thing for football. I think it's great for the XFL. I'm happy they're going to be around another year. I've always maintained that 2001 incarnation could have made it if they had just, if they had just stuck around. I really don't believe Vince was fully committed to it. I think he wanted to try it. When Dick Ebersol and NBC bailed, I think he was just like, all right, forget it. I'm cutting my losses. I'm a billionaire because of my wrestling product. I'm going to continue to focus on my wrestling product. But I'm glad that the XFL is going to be around another year, and I'm anxious to see what Vince McMahon does tonight. And quite honestly, I can't imagine them canceling WrestleMania. Like I'm genuinely curious. Are they going to hold WrestleMania at the Performance Center? Again, this is less than a month away. How different is our world going to be in 1 month? Which you go back to the statement by Adam Silver in the letter that he sent to every NBA fan last night. We're going to reevaluate where we're at in 30 days. And I do think that the NBA has options if things are even remotely better. And there's no telling that they are. They could treat professional basketball the way that I think Vince McMahon treats professional wrestling, in the sense that, it sucks to not have a live crowd, but essentially you're putting on a television product. Ticket sales, that's a small fraction of what the NBA makes every year. The big slice of the pie comes from their television contracts. And if they can fulfill those television contracts with ESPN and TNT, the fact that there's not a live crowd, there really isn't that big of a deal. I mean, it'll be weird to watch, sure. It'll be weird to hear, absolutely. It'll be an adjustment, sure. But it'll be professional basketball on television. It'll be meaningful professional basketball on television. But I think you still have to have a market, level of improvement in, where we're at in terms of the coronavirus. There has to be something that says, we're on the downswing. You keep hearing the, what's the term that they're using? Bend the curve or something like that. They're talking about changing, the trajectory of how people are, how quickly and easily people are being infected by this virus. I was texting with, I didn't get permission to use. I was texting with someone who listens to the show very, very regularly. And that person is a nurse. And he was telling me about, the protocols and about, some of the misconceptions. I should probably pull this up and tell you some of what he sent to me. The one thing that I thought this was like an airborne illness, and it's not. It's an illness that where I'm trying to find his exact quote. First, it's not an airborne illness. It's a droplet transmission. The difference is that the airborne will stay in the air for a long time. Droplet sprays in the air up to 6 feet and then falls to any surface that is in that area and can be picked up by anyone touching it. It can also live on your hands or clothes if you sneeze or cough into those. That is why it spreads so easily, because it can be picked up by multiple people from just one person. So that goes back to why it's so important for everybody to just be vigorously washing their hands over and over and over again. But it was eye-opening conversation with that person last night, and I just, in the next 30 days, how much is going to change? Is it going to get better or is it going to get worse? Like, I don't think this virus that's being spread worldwide is going to suddenly get better just because all major sports have shut down. I think it's those organizations, the NCAA, the NBA, Major League Baseball pushing off opening day for 2 weeks, the PGA. I think it's all of these organizations. It's they're doing their citizen diligence here. It's like, okay, there's a virus that is incredibly contagious and easily spreadable. Okay, what can we do? Well, let's minimize our events, because if we minimize our events, it minimizes, our fault for having a whole bunch of people gathered up in one place at one time. And so what do we see in the next 30 days that can put the NBA in a position to where that changes? Are tests more readily available? Can the NBA use private companies in terms of getting tests for their athletes, for their personnel? And of course, you don't have to get tested unless you have symptoms. Right? There's a certain, all of these teams that were quarantined after their games with the Utah Jazz, the quarantine was like 4 days. And it was, the directive was clear. If you feel anything, like if you think you're suffering from any of these symptoms, and they lay out the symptoms, then, we're going to get you tested right away. Thus, we're going to get everybody tested, similar to what happened with the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz had to get everybody tested immediately after they found out Rudy Gobert was positive. Obviously, they found out Donovan Mitchell was positive. Those were the only two out of the, I think, 58 that were tested that night that came back positive. So if you're able to do that, then perhaps you can have a television show version. Rather than a live sporting event, you can have a television show version of the NBA playoffs where they're played in front of an empty arena. Or not in front of an empty arena. That doesn't make sense. They're played in an empty arena. And it's broadcast on television. And that's how we consume it. It's the only option that I can think of, because to think this worldwide pandemic is suddenly going to be better in 30 days, I think Adam Silver is making the right call. We're going to reevaluate things in 30 days, and ultimately in 30 days, I know Mark Cuban was talking about the potential of playing, maybe we play in late July, or maybe we play in August. I don't think any of that is happening. I think in 30 days, the NBA moves forward with what is ultimately the regular season is over. The regular season has been completely suspended. The rankings are as they are, and the NBA playoffs are starting. That's the only thing I could think of. And if it is the end of the regular season, can I ask them? First of all, I'm sorry. This is the danger of not having a fully structured show. I have a bunch of notes in front of me, and I just keep thinking of other things to say and other things to ask. Because much like yesterday's show, I have a lot more questions than I have answers. But you remember the thing with the NBA and Daryl Morey in China? That was this year. 6 weeks ago, one of the greatest professional basketball players that ever existed died in a helicopter crash at the age of 41. The NBA was the first league to suspend all operations because of the coronavirus. That has all happened this year. I don't know why. That's just, doesn't the NBA China thing, doesn't the Daryl Morey thing, doesn't that feel like it was ages ago? Kobe was 6 weeks ago. And and that's the other shame to all of this is, Kobe's going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. That's still a ways away. I think Kobe would have had a heavy presence, so to speak, at the NBA Finals, and maybe he still will, because maybe the NBA Finals will still happen. But it's just amazing to think, and I think Adam Silver, we're really close. I just call him Adam. But he's super approachable. Doesn't it feel like you'd call him, hey, Commissioner Silver, Mr., and he would say, hey, man, call me Adam. Like where you go meet David Stern. Hey, David, hey, call me Commissioner Stern, pal. Damn it. Yeah, and that's not, I've met David Stern on several occasions. He's actually very, very approachable. He's more intimidating but once you meet him and you talk to him, he is very, very personal. He's very warm and welcoming. It's just on the surface, he's not. And I think you can approach Adam Silver and David Stern very, very differently. Oh, by the way, David Stern passed away this year. All of that has happened in this NBA season. I don't know. I don't know. None of that matters. It's just amazing. That's the year that Adam Silver has had to navigate. His predecessor passes away. One of the greatest players of all time passes away, tragically at 41. He's cost who knows how many, hundreds of millions of dollars. He's criticized for not punishing Daryl Morey. He's criticized for not saying enough. LeBron James is criticized over this. All of this is happening within this basketball season. And now he's got to figure out how to navigate potentially not having the playoffs. He's got to figure out how to navigate potentially the season actually being over. And I was, I was able to find some. There's nothing like this. Going back to, I think the closest you've probably heard, now that the NHL canceled its season, the Stanley Cup was missed with the lockout in the early 2000s, and then the Spanish flu, which was 1918. The JFK assassination, back in 1963, that caused missed football game, weeks. Or actually it didn't. Wasn't that the one that they wound up playing? And it was the American Football League postponed games, but the NFL, because remember, this is when they were still separate. He didn't. I think it was Pete Rozelle. He didn't cancel games, and he called it the worst decision he's ever made in his career. He didn't cancel games immediately following the assassination of John F. Kennedy. So the AFL missed games. The NFL didn't. No one missed the Super Bowl. The earthquake in 1989, it pushed back the World Series. It didn't eliminate the World Series. But we're talking about the potential of the Stanley Cup and the NBA Finals all being eliminated. We're talking about, the Masters not being played, at least right now. The term for the Masters was postponed. March Madness is canceled. The NCAA tournaments are canceled. They're not postponed. They're canceled. They're not happening. All of these major sporting events just being eliminated. There is no precedent for this. Absolutely none. Not September 11th, not JFK, not any earthquake, not, Hurricane Katrina. It changed the complexion of an NFL season for the Saints, but not for the NFL. Leagues, companies, businesses all over the country are being affected. You think advertising agencies, are dealing with all of this? You think people want to spend money on advertising right now? Or, who's going out to buy a car? Like, who's headed out to the Roseville Auto Mall right now to get a new ride, get a new whip? People aren't really thinking about that. Like, they're thinking about canned food and toilet paper and bottled water. It's just I'm 39 years old, man. This is uncharted waters for me. This is something that I've never experienced before, and I'm comfortable in saying, like, you probably haven't either. Like, I'm supposed to slip in a Sly Sky Naturals read here. How am I going to tell you to go spend money on CBD? You can use a promo code in the game, get 15% off your order, but I feel like that's disingenuous to you. It's disingenuous to Sky Naturals or sponsors. I mentioned Vibe Health Bar. Like, go get some green juice. I don't know. Like, I guess Monday we'll just figure out what the new normal is. Like, what is going to be, because we're technically, we're not quarantined, but I feel like we're all just kind of quarantined together over the course of the next month. We're sports fans. We're without sports. We're fans of the entertainment that it provides us. I've got to figure out how to, we've got sponsors, with the Hoop Ball Network. We've got responsibilities as it pertains to our podcast there. So we've got to figure out how to talk about the Sacramento Kings at a time where we don't, it's not that important. And that was part of Adam Silver's letter last night. Yeah, we're disappointed, but really, there's a greater issue here that we're dealing with. There's a greater problem that we have in front of us, not as a league, but as a nation. And we've got to figure out how to get through that. And we're doing our part. And the NHL is doing their part, and the NCAA is doing their part, and Major League Soccer is doing their part. Kevin Love is doing his part as well. He pledged $100,000 Thursday to aid arena workers displaced by the league's response to the coronavirus. Kevin Love sent a text message to ESPN saying, my hope is that others will step up. We've seen a lot of owners say, similar things to what Kevin Love did. Mark Cuban has spoke very openly about it. I know, I just give Mark Cuban so much praise because shortly, the Dallas Mavericks were playing when they were playing on national TV. They were playing on ESPN when it was announced that the league year, that the season is being suspended. And, Mark Cuban's always good for a soundbite. ESPN was smart. They were quick. They got up and they grabbed Mark to get his thoughts on the season being suspended. And, he just started talking again. This is within minutes of the season being canceled. Like, not figurative minutes. Like, it was within minutes of us all finding out that the league was being canceled, or that the season was being canceled. And he was asked, what is your reaction to this? And he just goes off and talks and talks and talks. And again, I tweeted about this without prompting or questioning. He said, I feel bad for the, our workers here, like our hourly workers here at the arena. They're such a valuable part of what we do. Like we're going to put something together for them. We'll figure something out, but this is just a bad situation. So I applaud him for, other people being first in, being in the front of his mind. I give him a big applause for that. And I'm hopeful a number of other owners will follow suit. I'm hopeful that a number of other players will follow suit. But, unfortunately, and I hope that this works out for them because they're obviously, their livelihood, their income is dependent on those type of events happening. But there are a lot of people, the economy in areas that are hit pretty hard. San Francisco, California in general, Massachusetts has been hit pretty hard. Like the economy in those states, it's going to be difficult. People will almost certainly lose their job. There are people who have jobs who, their jobs are dependent on other companies spending money with them. I talked about advertising agencies a little bit ago. Locally run ads that you hear on ESPN, that you hear on KHTK, that you hear on whatever your favorite, radio station is or whatever your favorite television station is. Those types of things they're difficult. Those types of ads are difficult to get on the air now. Now you've got to go to another company and go, hey, I know the whole world is panicking right now, but you want to up your commercial load here and drop another $10,000 on ads or just things like that. And it's going to be difficult, man. This is going to be it's going to be a strange 4 to 6 weeks. And then who knows what happens after that. Again, I hope is, we hit the peak of it and we're on, the downswing and I guess the virus can be contained somehow. I don't know how. I don't know if we're talking vaccinations. I really don't know what. But it seems like that line of thinking on my part is premature. Thinking that we're at the point where just because, our in our little world of sports here, like our little world of entertainment, that, because all of these leagues canceled what they're doing, that we're not now on the downswing. I think that's a bit naive on all of our parts. Rudy Gobert made his first public comments yesterday on Instagram. This was shortly after Donovan Mitchell made a post where on Instagram where he updated everybody on how he's feeling, and it wasn't difficult to read between the lines with what Donovan Mitchell wrote, other than he hopes people will be responsible and aware of what this virus is and how easily others can be contaminated with it. Again, it wasn't difficult to figure out who he was talking about. He was talking about his teammate Rudy Gobert shortly after Donovan Mitchell posted what he did on Instagram. Rudy Gobert did as well. He said, and I quote, "I want to thank everyone for the outpouring of concern and support over the last 24 hours. I've gone through so many emotions since learning of my diagnosis, mostly fear, anxiety, and embarrassment. The first and most important thing is I would like to publicly apologize to the people that I may have endangered. At the time, I had no idea I was even infected. I was careless and make no excuse. I hope my story serves as a warning and causes everyone to take this seriously. I will do whatever I can to support using my experience as a way to educate others and prevent the spread of this virus. I am under great care and will fully recover. Thank you again for all your support. I encourage everyone to take all of the steps to stay safe and healthy. Love." That's Rudy Gobert. So there you have it. That's kind of where we are. What does Monday bring? I don't know, man. We'll all find out together. Like, I'm not concerned. I mean, we'll have a podcast for you. Hopefully you'll listen. I know a lot of people are off of their routines right now. A lot of people are working from home. A lot of people are just being told, "Hey, don't come in today." I know my podcast habits are based on routine. The only radio show I really listen to is the Dan Patrick Show. That's based off of my routine. If I'm off of my routine, I'm not listening to the show. If I'm off of my routine, I'm missing my favorite podcast. So I know a lot of you are off of your routine and you won't be here every day. That's okay. We'll be here when you get back. Point is, whatever it is that we're going through, we'll figure it out and we'll get through all of this together. And if we're all self-quarantined, man, we'll just be self-quarantined together. Maybe I could figure out a way to take live phone calls, on the air, on the YouTube live stream or whatever. We'll figure out something, man. But whatever this lull is in sports, however long it lasts, and it's gonna last a while. We'll be able to talk about NFL free agency next week, that's for sure. This Tom Brady thing may or may not come to an end. We'll know by the time we get back on Monday whether the collective bargaining agreement has passed or not. So we've got plenty in front of us to talk about, and I appreciate you all for allowing me to be a part of. I normally say thank you for allowing me to be a part of your sports coverage. Just thanks for letting me be a part of your day. Be safe this weekend. Wash your hands. Be aware of your surroundings. I can't remember if I told you the Safeway story yesterday. How I never go to the grocery store, and when I got there, I was scared to death to touch the cart. Or not scared, but I looked at it like, I don't want to touch that. I became that, like, all of a sudden was that guy. Then I became totally, like, aware of, okay, don't touch your face. Don't touch anything while you're here at the store other than what you have to touch. And then I got home, unpacked a few things that I bought, and then washed my hands for, 60 seconds. This is what we should all be doing. It's what we should all be doing anyways. But it just, like, I was the one who was talking about, okay, let's just be careful, be mindful. Meanwhile, I get to the store and I'm like, uh-oh. I don't want to touch this cart. So just be safe this weekend. Be smart. Take care of yourself. Take care of your loved ones. Take care of the people closest to you. And we'll be back. I promise, man. We'll be back next week here on the podcast with Damien Barling.